ESPN.com senior college football writer Ivan Maisel. Ivan, thank you so much for your time. How are you today?
Hey, Aaron. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for joining me. You wrote an interesting piece that I think a lot of Alabama fans really enjoyed this morning, entitled "Nick Saban is Actually a Human Being, Honest." Where did the, idea for this story come, and how long did it take you to report it?
Oh, well, thank you. Where did the idea? Just things I had sort of heard along the way. That story about the Jason Foundation struck me, and then I heard about the night before A-Day. Somebody called me and said, "Hey, you should have been there, seen the way these guys spoke about Coach Saban." And so I started asking around a little bit and thinking about how he's interacted with me over the years, and I just decided it was worth asking. And I started, sometime last month, asking people around, and came down there and asked him, and he, the first thing out of his mouth was the Attila the Hun comment. So I thought, okay, here we go.
Speaking with Ivan Maisel, ESPN senior writer for ESPN.com, and his story today, Nick Saban isn't actually a human being, honest. Ivan, what do you think the biggest disconnect is in the way people perceive Nick Saban and the way he actually is?
Well, I think, as he said, he started out with a reputation as a guy that was difficult to deal with, and there was ample evidence to support that. But I think as he's gotten older, wiser, seen a bigger picture, that's not who he is anymore. He's still, he wants it done his way, and no matter whether you work for him or cover him. And that's, and if it isn't done his way, he gets upset. Well, and so people equate that with all the stories from earlier in his career, but I think it's a little more complex than that, and that was the point I was trying to make.
Speaking with Ivan Maisel in his article about Nick Saban and maybe softening a bit as he's now become a grandfather and continues to get a little older. Ivan, how much of that perception that we think of Nick Saban, it comes from just the clips we see on SportsCenter, on websites, of just his run-ins with the media?
Well, I think that's part of it, and listen, Aaron, a lot of what develops as people's image in the world today is two-dimensional. It's, oh yeah, that guy's a great guy, that guy's a jerk, that guy's, whatever. And that's just kind of the nature of the media beast these days. But it's just, and I know, you're the last guy I would have to explain this to. He beats on y'all, daily, or weekly anyway. But, if you're around him, you understand that it's a little, it goes a little deeper than that.
Talking to Ivan Maisel from ESPN.com on his story today about Nick Saban, who's actually a human being. You kind of walk us through the story, maybe how the tornado and the aftermath of that maybe had an impact on him that helped maybe put things in different perspective from him. What did you learn from that?
Well, everybody who knows him well had a little different theory, and some pointed to his response, how shaken he was by the devastation of the tornado, and how he did so much for the community in so many ways afterward. And some people said it was him becoming a grandfather, and some people said it was because of the success that he has enjoyed in Tuscaloosa, that he doesn't quite feel there's as much to prove, or even that it's his system. He's got his system going, and he's hired people that know what he wants, and he doesn't have to be there every second, 80 hours a week, 12 months a year, making sure it's done his way. And I think it's, those are all true.
Speaking with Ivan Maisel on his story about Nick Saban actually being a human being, and you focused on something that I remember asking Nick about during spring practice, and that was, several of his former players coming back and speaking very glowingly about him and his role and impact on their lives. Some of them as a father figure, and I could tell when I asked him the question, that truly meant a lot to him. When you asked him and told that part, what was your read on kind of his emotions and sentiment regarding that night?
Well, I think it all feeds into what he says in the living room to those 17-year-olds and their parents. That if you send me your kid, then I'm going to do my best to turn him into a young man that you would want to have as a son. And he demands a lot from those guys on the field and probably just as much off the field, and how they act and how they get their work done and not cutting corners. And I think for those players to come back from the NFL or from the beginnings of their careers off the field and tell him how much they appreciate what he did, meant a huge amount. Terry Saban said to me, so much of what comes across Nick's desk is the bad stuff. This one needs help. This one's in trouble. This one screwed up. And for him to get a phone call saying, "Hey, thanks for everything you did for me," or for what those guys said at the A-Day reception, really means a lot to him, as it would anyone.